Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode we're doing another listener request. And this is of course from Prince Neo 22 again. Can you do a Derek Barnett? Please. He hasn't gotten a lot of recognition, even though his stats are on par with Myles Garrett. And yeah, I might as well do a Myles Garrett video. As you know, a lot of the data for the 2017 NFL draft class is in my 2017 NFL draft guide. So if you guys have a bunch of questions relating to the 2017 class, the guide's right there. It's on Amazon.com. Just type in 2017 NFL draft analytics guide. It's the only analytics guide. I mean, that's the key word. There's tons of draft guides, but I'm the only one that has an analytics guide. So, but yeah, if you guys want to know more about the 2017 class, definitely go check that out. I'm more than happy to do 2017 prospects individually, just to get that out of the way, because I do know that some people are more interested in some prospects over others. And I figured, you know what, I'll do Derek Barnett because, one, a listener requested it, and two, because I think he's a very interesting sort of prospect to kind of decipher and kind of figure out. Because there's a lot of positives, obviously, and there's some question marks with him in terms of his data profile. And I think he's going to be a very interesting sort of case in the future about how teams view, edge rushers and pass rushers and those types of guys in the future. But I figured, you know what, let's talk about Derek Barnett and look at what his data shows. And in terms of the terms that you should be familiar with, defensive market share data is essentially where you take an individual defensive statistic and then you divide it by the team statistics. So if Derek Barnett, for example, has 10 sacks on a team that has 40 sacks, then Derek Barnett had 25% sack market share. But what you do with that number is you take that number and you compare it to every other pass rusher since the 1989 NFL draft class in terms of what their sack market share was. And then you're able to see, okay, where did all the All-Pro players end up? Where did all the Pro Bowl players end up? And all that kind of jazz, all that stuff. And essentially we're looking at solo tackle market share, sack market share, and pass deflection market share. Well, not pass deflection market, excuse me. Tackle for loss market share. Then we're going to look at athleticism data. Athleticism data is essentially explosive lower body strength, speed, and flexibility. Explosive lower body strength is the vertical and the broad jump measured against mass density, which basically shows you how explosive they are in terms of their hips and knee area. Basically, did they skip leg days or not is the best way to explain that metric. Then, of course, you have the speed score, which is essentially how fast they are for their size. And again, it's relative speed. It's the 40 is not exactly about how fast you can run in 40 yards. I mean, that's definitely how the drill is performed, but it's really about what your relative speed is. If you have a train traveling this fast, from this point, basically, if you have a train traveling this fast, how long will it take them to go 40 yards? You shouldn't think about the 40 as this thing that is just measuring 40 yards. Even though you're measuring it in 40 yards, you're only measuring in 40 yards to limit the amount of mistakes and errors you can make if you do 10 yards, 20 yards, stuff like that. And that's a whole different discussion about the 10-yard split and the 20-yard split. But then we're also going to look at flexibility. Flexibility is a short shoulder / free cone measured against mass density. And mass density, for those that are like, it's weight divided by height. So basically looking at how thickly dense they are, and the better they do compared to their peers, the higher the score they get. This is a 1999 NFL draft class, at least with athleticism data. So with all that stuff out of the way, let's get to Derek Barnett in terms of what his production looks like, what his athleticism looks like, and then maybe one athleticism comp that may be not that flattering, but it's the only one I got. So in terms of successful outcomes. So in terms of Derek Barnett's production, He was a very, very productive player. He had a 90.94 solo tackle market share score, which, based on the data going back to the 1989 NFL draft class, every single multiple All-Pro player since the 1989 class had at least a 80 or higher in terms of solo tackle market share, and Derek Barnett, of course, had a 90.94. And he also had a very high sack market share score, had a 97.48 sack market share score. And since the 1989 NFL draft class, the bottom threshold, every single one of those guys, in terms of all-pro players, had at least a 84.67 sack market share score. So Derek Barnett meets that threshold. Now, of course, with tackle for loss threshold, he has an 86.93, which is above the all-pro threshold for tackle for loss as well, and, of course, beats the Pro Bowl threshold too. So overall, Derek Barnett has really great production. He pretty much hits all the marks in terms of an all-pro player in terms of his production, and in many cases exceeds those expectations as well, in terms of his sack market share and his solo tackle market share, for the most part. So he's good. I mean, he has good production overall. Now, what really matters, though, is what his athleticism looks like. Because, production is a part of the puzzle. You could be a tremendously productive player, not athletic, and then not become much of anything at the NFL level. So we really need to see, okay, what does his athleticism look like? Does that match up with the guys who hit these numbers as well, in terms of what their athleticism traits were? And this is where Derek Barnett kind of has some issues. His explosive lower body strength score was a 42.09 out of 100. His speed score was a 37.07 out of 100. And his flexibility score was a 73.70 out of 100. Based on my data, when it comes to his athleticism, his explosiveness only hits the Pro Bowl threshold in terms of the bottom end threshold in terms of athleticism. And his flexibility does hit the Pro Bowl threshold. But his speed score does not hit the All-Pro or Pro Bowl threshold when it comes to athleticism for his size. He has a 37.07 speed score only. There's never been a multiple All-Pro edge rusher since the 1989 NFL draft class who didn't have a 71.18 speed score. And by that same token, there's never been a multiple All-Pro or Pro Bowl player, who only had a 57.58 speed score. So Derek Barnett is essentially a very weird-ish, not weird, but a different prospect because he has great production out of college. Obviously, we went over that. He has the explosiveness of a Pro Bowl player. He has the flexibility of a Pro Bowl player, but he doesn't have the speed of a Pro Bowl player. And that is really where the disconnect is with him in terms of this model. Now, what does that mean as an analytics guy? That means that Derek Barnett has more likelihood of becoming a long-term starter versus a multiple Pro Bowl / All-Pro player. That's really all that means. It doesn't mean that he's going to be a bust. It doesn't mean that he's going to suck. It just means that the expectations for him should be a little less than other pass rushers because of this athleticism flaw. And I understand that some people take this as, a big negative, like, oh, you're too negative on players, blah, 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 blah. You don't talk about outliers. In this case, there are no outliers. If there was a player who was a Pro Bowl player who had the same profile as Derek Barnett in terms of having a speed score that was this low and became a Pro Bowl player, I would be the first to tell you that. But there isn't one. So I don't know what to tell you. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I could really say. There's not been an outlier based on this data. Does Derek Barnett have a case for becoming an outlier? Maybe. He had very good production. He hits at least the Pro Bowl threshold for explosiveness and flexibility. So, there's positives in his profile. It's just I can't sit here and say that he's going to become an outlier. He's going to become that one guy to beat the odds when it's never happened since the 1989 NFL draft class. You know, or 1999 if you just are going by athleticism data, specifically, which is still a pretty long time period. Like whether you look at it. And based on his athleticism, he compares very similarly to Ryan Denny. Ryan Denny was a pass rusher for the Buffalo Bills. And in terms of their explosiveness, speed, Ryan Denny was a little bit faster, though. And flexibility, Ryan Denny is very similar to Derek Barnett. And he, of course, was a long-term starting pass rusher and had a pretty decent career in terms of being a starting pass rusher, was pretty decent in his career. Now, he's the complete opposite in terms of build and everything, because Ryan Denny was like a 6'6" or more, actually, type of pass rusher. He was more of a tall, bendy guy than Derek Barnett, who's kind of a shorter, bendy guy. But that is essentially what you're looking at. It is a pass rusher who is, who wins with his bend, who wins with his flexibility. And, that is something that will work in the NFL. I mean, you have offensive tackles that are not the most flexible, and this does give him an advantage when he faces those types of offensive tackles. It's just that there are some times when he's going to face offensive tackles who are just much more explosive, much more faster than him, and who have just as much flexibility as him, and he's going to have issues with those types of guys, no matter what the situation is, circumstances. So that's the only thing I would really say about Derek Barnett. He's a good player. I mean, I've seen his film. He's a very decent player on film. He's one of the more developed players in the class on film. He definitely had very good production. He does have decent flexibility, in terms of having really, really good flexibility, and he does have really good explosiveness. But again, there's never been a Pro Bowl player with this type of athleticism profile, specifically with his speed score. As a result, I can't really project that. I can't say he's going to be a Pro Bowl player. Multiple Pro Bowl player, specifically. So that is the only thing I would really say about Barnett. In conclusion, is that he has a lot of positives, but he misses out on speed, which is a big, big, big thing when it comes to projection at the edge rusher position. So again, my name is James Coburn. You can find my work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.